today, the 12th July, in which he almost accused me of not allowing honorable members to raise points of order. The Honorable Ashiavadan was referring to the sitting of 9th July when, in the course of the winding up his speech of the Honorable Jagat Pal, Minister of Health and Wellness, on the Optical Council Bill, the Honorable Omia attempted to raise a point of clarification to which I did not accede. The Honorable Omia insisted, to which I once again informed him that he did not have the floor, and I requested the Minister to continue with his speech. However, the Honorable Omia continued to insist, to which I once again informed him that I have already given my ruling, and in view of his continued insistence, I ordered him out of the House. I have to draw the attention of the House to Standing Order 3913A, according to which no member shall interrupt any other member except on a point of order. Clearly, since the Honorable Omia was not raising a point of order, I could not give him the floor unless he had sought and obtained that the Minister give way for him to raise his point of clarification. I must also add that the Honorable Ashiavadan attempted to compare the above situation to one which arose during a meeting of the Committee of Supply on the Appropriation Bill, where he averred that on 22nd June, the Deputy Speaker who was in the chair of that Committee of Supply apparently gave permission to the Honorable Minister Ganu to comment on a ruling which he had given. I must state that this attempt to compare what took place before the Committee of Supply on the 22nd June and what happened on the 9th July is totally inappropriate, as the circumstances are not the same. In fact, according to Hansard, the Deputy Speaker never gave the floor and the permission to the Honorable Minister to comment on his ruling. It is regrettable that the Honorable Ashiavadan did not take the necessary precaution to consult the relevant Hansard before making such a statement on the radio, which I consider serious, misleading, and a deliberate attempt to cause aspersion on the authority and the integrity of the chair, which amounts to the offense of contempt of the Assembly under Section 6(1)(s) of the National Assembly Privileges, Immunities, and Powers Act. Thank you for your attention. Honorable Mayotte.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me donner l'occasion de commenter sur les amendements proposés au projet de loi concernant le Construction Industry Development Board. Tout d'abord, permettez-moi de féliciter le ministre des Infrastructures nationales et des Développements communautaires, l'honorable Bobby Ariram, pour ses efforts visant à corriger les écarts existants dans le CIDB Act de 2008, amendé en 2015 et 2018, respectivement. Pour les moins érudits, permettez-moi, Monsieur le Président, de dresser un petit tableau, bref, de ce qu'est le CIDB. Le Conseil de développement de l'industrie de la construction, plus communément appelé CIDB, est un organe statutaire établi en vertu de la loi CIDB de 2008. L'objectif primordial du CIDB était de promouvoir le développement et l'amélioration de l'industrie de la construction. Le CIDB opère sous l'égide du ministère des Infrastructures nationales et du développement communautaire. Il est dirigé par un conseil composé de 11 membres, dont le président. Le CIDB vise à fournir un leadership et des conseils pour le développement d'une industrie de la construction compétitive et de classe mondiale. Le CIDB est maintenant reconnu comme l'un des points focaux de l'industrie de la construction à Maurice. L'une des activités principales du CIDB est l'enregistrement des consultants et des entrepreneurs. La loi prévoit des dispositions pour l'enregistrement des consultants et entrepreneurs locaux et étrangers. Ceci est soutenu par des règlements d'habilitation qui stipulent des dispositions détaillées de la loi principale sur la législation du processus d'enregistrement. L'enregistrement est désormais étendu à d'autres domaines du secteur de la construction. De nouvelles réglementations ont été adoptées pour l'enregistrement des prestataires de services autres que les consultants, à savoir les opérateurs de conception assistée par ordinateur pour les travaux de construction, notamment les dessinateurs, les techniciens en construction et les tiers certificateurs en construction. De nouvelles réglementations ont également été adoptées pour l'enregistrement des fournisseurs de matériaux de construction, d'installation et d'équipements de construction. Et aujourd'hui, nous sommes ici, dans cette chambre, dans cette auguste assemblée, pour débattre sur les nouveaux amendements que propose ce projet de loi du CIDB. Monsieur le Président, je pense que ces amendements arrivent à un bon moment. L'industrie de la construction est un pilier majeur, le socle économique du présent et du futur pour tous les pays développés. En effet, la construction, au sens large, a un impact direct sur de très nombreux secteurs économiques. Je citerai l'emploi tout d'abord, les transports, le monde des finances, mais aussi le confort de nos concitoyens dans leur quotidien. Moins de bouchons sur les routes, plus de confort dans les habitations et les bureaux, plus de sécurité, moins de pollution, etc. Le dynamisme de l'industrie de la construction rejaillit sur l'ensemble de l'économie du pays. Plusieurs objectifs ont prévalu à la mise en place de ce projet de loi, qui est un acte volontaire. Je pense, Monsieur le Président, qu'il est bon que nous revenions sur ces objectifs pour mieux comprendre ce en quoi les amendements proposés dans ce projet de loi stimuleront l'économie de la construction. Parmi les objectifs, Monsieur le Président, je note en premier lieu le développement du pays, dont l'ensemble de sa population pourra bénéficier par un élèvement du niveau de vie, la création d'emplois nouveaux, un cadre de vie moderne et sain. C'est ce à quoi nous nous employons dans notre quotidien et que nous avons, une fois de plus, le moyen de concrétiser. Quels sont les liens entre ces objectifs très transversaux et le projet de loi dont il est question aujourd'hui? Eh bien, ils sont nombreux, Monsieur le Président. Permettez-moi de citer quelques-uns. D'abord, la promotion de l'île Maurice, de son développement, qui permettra d'afficher sans équivoque que notre pays s'est résolument tourné vers la modernité et le développement durable. L'encouragement de la participation de petites et moyennes entreprises au travers d'un savoir-faire maîtrisé avec des techniques locales, des hommes au savoir-faire établi, aux côtés des grands groupes internationaux qui nous apporteront bien évidemment des compétences complémentaires. L'optimisation de la qualité de construction, que ce soit dans le résultat immédiat, mais également dans la durée. Une meilleure prise en compte de la sécurité au travail, qui permettra de sécuriser nos chantiers et la santé des concitoyens. Tout ceci, Monsieur le Président, sera également un moyen qui permettra de valoriser le savoir des professionnels de la construction, ainsi que leur maîtrise et, à leur tour, de favoriser l'exportation des entreprises locaux dans des pays qui, eux aussi, veulent emboîter le pas de notre dynamisme et nos valeurs. Nous sommes dans une ère qui force à l'ouverture, à l'internationalisation, Sans cela, le repli sur soi qui en résulte est le choix du court terme qui conduira à un appauvrissement de nos savoirs, de notre pays et de sa population. Le protectionnisme que certaines réglementations ont favorisé dans le passé ont été, hélas, une forme d'encouragement à la médiocrité. Non pas que nos concepteurs soient ainsi, mais nous ne devons pas avoir peur de l'accroissement de la compétitivité qui résultera de cette ouverture. Elle poussera les créateurs, les architectes, les designers, les ingénieurs, ainsi que les constructeurs à plus d'innovation, plus de recherche, plus de richesse professionnelle. C'est l'essence même de l'évolution, de l'ouverture sur le futur et du développement des compétences, de l'enrichissement du citoyen. C'est aussi le meilleur moyen de projeter notre pays dans un avenir plus qualitatif et de gérer efficacement et durablement l'investissement public. Monsieur le Président, notre République, comme tous les autres États, se prépare au changement post-Covid. Nous devons porter un nouveau regard sur la façon de gérer le développement, la créativité dans les projets, dans les solutions techniques et technologiques à intégrer dans le monde de la construction. Le CIDB a besoin de ce vent de modernisme et de richesse. Pour ce faire, il a besoin de s'ouvrir simplement tout en restant attentif. Sur le contenu même de ce projet de loi, nous notons avec satisfaction que plusieurs sections du Principal Act ont été amendées pour classer avec discernement les contractors, service providers and suppliers séparément, tout en incluant de nouvelles sections, c'est-à-dire la section 20A, par exemple, concernant le Registration of Service Provider and Supplier. Ici, nous pensons plus particulièrement aux équipements de construction, les échafaudages, les équipements de maintenance, de manutention, de terrassement. Ce projet de loi, Monsieur le Président, démontre clairement la volonté du gouvernement de vouloir consolider la sécurité et le bien-être de tous ceux concernés dans ce secteur, surtout les ouvriers qui sont les plus exposés aux accidents du travail au quotidien. Et là, si je puis me permettre d'ouvrir cette petite parenthèse pour rendre hommage dans cette Assemblée à Fabrice Tullois, qui est décédé il y a quelques jours à l'âge de 37 ans sur son lieu de travail au New Victoria Urban Terminal. Je présente mes plus sincères condoléances à sa famille. Nous saluons également, Monsieur le Président, l'initiative du ministre des Infrastructures d'accorder le même traitement à tous les professionnels de l'industrie de la construction et que les architectes étrangers puissent maintenant, bien sûr, dans cet esprit d'échange, exercer librement à Maurice, comme c'est le cas pour les autres consultants. Monsieur le Président, il est établi que l'industrie de la construction est un secteur dynamique qui pèse de façon significative dans la balance économique de Maurice. Elle emploie environ 50 000 personnes, ce qui représente environ 10% de la population active. À l'ère de l'autoroute de l'informatique, virage que nous avons su parfaitement négocier, les frontières, même pour une île, n'existent plus dans le domaine du business. Nos acteurs locaux, concepteurs, créateurs et constructeurs sont dans l'obligation d'être de plus en plus compétitifs. Nous devons donc, nous, de notre côté, nous adapter aux exigences dans des domaines tels que la durabilité, la préservation de l'environnement, de résilience au changement climatique. Nous devons être réactifs aux progrès sociaux, économiques et technologiques. Nous œuvrons aujourd'hui pour nos enfants et petits-enfants. Le CIDB, en tant que principal organisme de réglementation du secteur, jouera un rôle plus qu'affirmatif dans ce secteur qui ne cesse de croître avec les nombreux projets d'infrastructures en cours de réalisation, mais également les nombreuses études qui dessinent les chantiers de demain. Aujourd'hui, pour beaucoup, le CIDB est synonyme de politique d'enregistrement et de réglementation. L'enregistrement des consultants et des entrepreneurs est en effet un processus important car il nous permet d'évaluer leur degré de professionnalisme et de compétences en vue de garantir le développement d'une industrie de construction de haute qualité. Cependant, le rôle du CIDB ne peut pas se résumer à celui d'un régulateur et un chien de garde. Le CIDB doit également jouer le rôle de facilitateur et faire prendre conscience aux acteurs de la construction que la durabilité environnementale et le développement ne sont pas incompatibles. Monsieur le Président, ce projet de loi contribuera certes à ce que les aménageurs, dans les différentes étapes de la vie d'une opération, c'est-à-dire dans son étape de conception, de réalisation, mais également lors de toutes les étapes de maintenance, intègrent de façon majeure dans leur stratégie la réduction au maximum de l'impact environnemental nocif. C'est ainsi que nous construisons un pays d'avenir. Pour ce faire, nous aurons besoin de nous ouvrir sur le monde extérieur. Nombreux sont les pays qui ont pris en compte ces valeurs depuis de nombreuses années et peuvent nous permettre rapidement de combler notre retard. Les professionnels de la construction ont des choses à apprendre. Ils pourront alors les mettre au profit de notre pays et à leur tour, demain, ils sauront exposer ces acquis. L'île Maurice est un immense chantier à ciel ouvert. C'est une réalité, Monsieur le Président. L'amendement au CIDB Act est incontournable. Nous avons fait le choix d'engager le pays dans un cycle de développement sans précédent avec des investissements majeurs qui dessinent ce que sera Maurice demain. Nous construisons des projets structurants, des routes, un système ferroviaire faisant appel aux meilleures technologies, des quartiers d'affaires et commerciaux au plus haut standard international. Nous sommes devenus, pour nombreux de nos pays amis, un modèle réel, un pays moderne, tout en sachant conserver nos valeurs, nos racines, nos richesses. L'amendement au CIDB Act contribuera à faciliter le business de nos entreprises, à avoir une meilleure qualité de prestations et à continuer à faire de Maurice une vitrine pour l'avenir. Monsieur le Président, je terminerai cette brève intervention en affirmant qu'avec ce projet de loi, le gouvernement, au milieu de la forte perturbation résultant de la crise sanitaire sans précédent que nous traversons, est capable de travailler pour l'avenir en choisissant la voie de la raison et du lendemain, de la meilleure façon qui soit, en permettant au secteur de la conception et de la construction de continuer d'évoluer et d'avancer, en acceptant l'ouverture et non pas le repli sur soi, en favorisant le mélange et le partage plutôt que l'autosatisfaction. Nous ne devons pas avoir peur de tout ceci. Au contraire, faisons confiance aux femmes et aux hommes de notre pays en leur permettant de s'enrichir et d'apprendre vite. Notre pays n'a plus de temps à perdre. Nous devons cela à notre peuple. Nous devons travailler qualitativement pour le bien-être de notre pays. C'était ma contribution, Monsieur le Président, et bien sûr, je recommande ce projet de loi à la Chambre. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Construction Industry Development Board Amendment Bill 2021 contains measures that will help improve and regulate the construction industry, such as the registration of providers of construction and construction services, as well as suppliers of construction materials, equipment, plant, and labor. But I must state at the outset that some clauses of the bill are not unanimously accepted, more specifically from quantity surveyors and architects. But I have not heard anything from engineers, which I suppose are very happy with the bill. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe later on the Honourable Minister could tell us the reason about this. The Mauritius Association of Quantity Surveyors and the Association of Architects have expressed concerns about the future of the local construction sector. Both associations have called upon the authorities concerned to backtrack on certain amendments that they believe could threaten their respective profession
before the second reading in Parliament today. But apparently this appeal has not been taken into consideration. And before I move to clauses that will have a direct impact on the QS profession, let me state that what the association has stated in a letter dated on the 5th of April 2021, that is, amendments affecting the QS profession were handled during the period of lockdown, when most of its members did not receive their work access permits. There were no consultations whatsoever by CIDB with the stakeholders prior to the bill being circulated. Having said so, Mr. Speaker, let me come to clause 29 of the amendment bill, where the bulk of the amendments are found and that would affect the life of many. At paragraph 29, bracket 2 of the bill, preparation of bidding documents is being included in the scope of duties of professional architects. And at paragraph 29, bracket 4 of the bill, preparation of bidding documents and bid evaluation have been included under the registered professional engineers' duties. The amendment brought to the House is to open up the preparation of bidding document to all professionals: architect, engineer, quantity surveyor, according to their relevant field of competence. It's only the builder that is not included, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, according to the QS Association, one of the reasons that prompted the Ministry of National Infrastructure to introduce an amendment to the law is to enable extension of the responsibility for preparation of bid document to engineers so as to align with the scheme of services of engineers at the Ministry of National Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, what is the logic behind such a drastic move? So the whole community of quantity surveyors in the country are being penalized just to allow the engineers at Ministry of National Infrastructure to amend its scheme of duties. This amendment to the Professional Quantity Surveyors Council Act of 2013 is argued by the QS Association will hit the core functions of the quantity surveyors. These functions, as set out in the said Act, are the outcome of 13 years of consultation by the then MPI with all stakeholders of the construction industry, including the CIDB. And according to the QS Association, the present initiative of the MNI, Mauritius Ministry of National Infrastructure, is tantamount to a collective destruction to the very foundation of its profession. Mr. Speaker, the scope of services of quantity surveyors already include the preparation and evaluation of bid documents. These are recorded as core duties of quantity surveying profession. The overall responsibility for the preparation of bid evaluation report and assessment of bids is a duty of the quantity surveyor. The financial appraisals of bids, which is the most important component of the bid evaluation exercise, falls directly under the competence and responsibility of a quantity surveyor. These are not performed by engineers or architects. And the amendment circulated last Friday to the Professional Architects Council Act and the Registered Professional Engineers Council, that is, preparation of bidding documents field in the field of architecture and in the field of engineering, are merely cosmetic. What does it mean in the field of architecture? What does it mean in the field of engineering? It is not clear at all, Mr. Speaker, sir. It can be anything. It is too vague, and it's not defined in the bill. There is this ambiguity As I said, in the field of engineering, it is extremely vague, and we don't know exactly what does that mean. As such, it is not appropriate to include such services in the scope of duties of professional architects and professional consulting engineers when these professionals, that is architects and engineers, have only superficial knowledge of same. These changes could make the role of QS almost obsolete. And at paragraph 29, 3(c) of the bill allows for a foreign quantity surveyor to practice as quantity surveyor in Mauritius, without the need for him to enter into a joint venture agreement with a local quantity surveyor or a local firm of quantity surveyor. Of course, amendments have been circulated, and the concept of collaboration has been added. I will come with this concept of collaboration later on, Mr. Speaker. Let me explain how the present law is in terms of joint venture agreement. The need for foreign consultants to enter into joint venture agreement with local counterparts has greatly helped professionals in the construction industry, as well as the construction industry at large over the years. The objective of the law as it currently stands, that is 51% for the Mauritian counterparts and 49% for foreigners, is to protect our local industry, including its professional employees and business we create. It also helps the industry to maintain and develop against unfair competition from foreigners proposing to set up in Mauritius to offer services to a local client. The joint venture also helps to promote transfer of technology, provide long-term security to Mauritians' clients, whether be it public or private, and against potential professional negligence post-project completion, as the Mauritian counterpart of the JV holding the majority may be held accountable for any issue arising thereof. Within the above scenario, it is up to the Mauritian partner of the joint venture to set up the internal share of responsibility within the JV, especially on the matter of maintaining the relevant professional indemnity cover for the required duration. This results in a win-win situation, local consultant win and the foreign consultant as well, and the local clients, and that is for all parties. And with the relevant use of modern technology, any professional can offer service up to a certain level without necessarily setting foot on local soil, or alternatively visiting the country, a short stay tourist visa, delivering his service and leaving without further ado. With the present mandatory requirement of the joint venture, such a scenario would be difficult, rather remote, and on the other hand, the client's interest is not protected. Now, amendments that has been circulated on Friday are the result of the severe criticism from both the QS and the architects. This is how the term collaboration has been added. Mr. Speaker, sir, the current law, joint venture is currently defined in the law, and everything is set out. Now this is being removed from the law and will come through regulations. Mr. Speaker, we all know that regulations are made by a minister, not by Parliament. We all know that regulations come from minister, and this can be done at any time without scrutiny of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, is this good governance? Is this the way forward now? The law, the present law, has gone through much debate in the House. The law has gone through much debate, and at times there are consensus On law, at times there are amendments in law, in a bill which come law, act afterward. Now, this is completely being repealed in our existing law, and it will come later on by regulations. And coming back to the new term collaboration, Mr. Speaker, is a loose definition. And using the word of the minister, I will quote, "It will be up to both parties to determine their respective percentage of liability and apportioning of fees and tasks based on their corresponding input on the projects, like responsible and mature adults will do." Mr. Speaker, sir, like responsible and mature adults will do. No, seriously? We are amending the law. We will go now through regulation to state what like mature adults will do. Do you know how many bad things happen between responsible and mature adults? Do you know, Mr. Speaker? I'm sure you know by the look of it. And do you know how many disputes, how many court cases are there between responsible and mature adults? So now we want to add this concept of mature adults in our regulations? Come on, this is not serious. This is, Mr. Speaker, a floodgate for problem and disputes. There can be fake collaboration, 5% to Mauritian guy and 90%, 95% for the foreigner. What will happen to potential professional negligence post-project completion? Who will be held accountable on any arising issue? And, Mr. Speaker, in the end, it's the client interest that will not be protected. Amending the 51-49% ratio downwards would weaken the position of the local client, whether it be public or private, because the local partner of the GV would have strictly no motivation, no interest in assuming the responsibility. The foreign consultant would reap all the benefits without necessarily assuming what should essentially be his fair share of responsibility and would leave the client fully exposed post-project completion. It would result in a win-lose situation. Foreign consultant will win and local one will lose, and the local client also will lose, with the client being unable to turn to anyone in case of later problems. It would be fully detrimental to our local industry and economy as a result. We perfectly understand the new world order, as the minister said, ease of doing business, globalization, and the consequence needed for our country to open up to the rest of the world. Our country is indeed a free economy, judging by the number of foreign players in our trades and in our local soil for the past 30, 40 years. However, one cannot ignore the fact of our status of small island developing states, whereby we are and we remain a small country with a small and somewhat fragile economy, where a dose of protectionism is indeed required to prevent total destruction of this fragile economic fabric. And, Mr. Speaker, numbers speak for themselves. Foreign investors are, by definition, often large corporations, counting employees in the hundreds, if not thousands, having offices in more than one city, more than one country, and could easily undercut prices for sometimes bringing our local companies to their knees and sending them into oblivion. A measure that, according to professionals of the construction, will upset the local sector already heavily affected by the pandemic. We must be mindful not open our doors for foreign architects and QS to flood in and consequently have our local consultants out of jobs. To my knowledge, there are approximately more than 200 QS in Mauritius, and architects as well, maybe more. And also, it's not exact to say that there has not been any joint venture. I can give 2 examples of private projects with joint ventures between architects. Firstly, the MMRC building in Eben and the IFS building in Eben. Mr. Speaker, this can be defective in law and will lead to a lot of abuse unless the word collaboration is clearly and amply defined under the bill, which is in front of the House today, and proper and genuine consultation be held with all stakeholders to define the mechanism for collaboration as defined under the bill, under the amendments that has been circulated, and also to the satisfaction of all stakeholders. And having said so, Mr. Speaker, I'm not defending any QS. I don't have any vested interest. I don't know any personal friend of mine who's a QS. The only QS that I know is in the House, and he's smiling at me today because I'm defending his interest. So, Mr. Speaker, and I guess he's very happy because I'm defending his profession. So, having said so, Mr. Speaker, let me move to paragraph 7 of the bill, which proposes that a representative of the Association of Consulting Engineers be appointed by the Minister. Mr. Speaker, this is clearly a double standard. The registered professional engineer, being a member of the Council of Registered Professional Engineers of Mauritius, already sits on the CIDB board. What is the need to have a second member? This shall create an unfair and bias regarding other professionals on the board. Now, if the ministry finds the need to have a second member on the board, why not having a second member of the architects or the QS? What is the need for have 2 representatives for engineers, not the architects and not the QS? I don't want to be nasty, but this bill clearly is biased towards the engineer, and I was being told that the person heading the CIDB is an engineer. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, it should be an equitable treatment to all professionals in the construction industry. Now, Mr. Speaker, paragraph 24 of the bill proposes a new provision of the confidentiality under the CIDB Act. The objective of the CIDB, amongst others, is to promote the development and improvement of the construction industry. And the CIDB aims at providing leadership and guidance towards the development of a competitive and world-class construction industry. The objective of the CIDB do not call for secrecy or confidentiality issues. All the actions of the CIDB should be transparent to abide by good governance. I don't understand the logic behind the deprivation of the right of a representative of a particular body sitting on the CIDB Council from communicating to the body he or she represents matters pertinent to that particular body, especially so in the case where the very foundation of that body he or she is representing is at stake, as the present case now. The idea of an association sending someone in a board, which represents the authority, is to send the views of its association. Now, how can you send someone in a board, in a council, in an authority to send your views, but in return that person wouldn't be allowed to give a feedback to his or her association? It doesn't make sense at all to have this clause in the bill, Mr. Speaker. As I said, we also fail to comprehend what matters which are in the public domain can be termed as secrecy at the board of the CIDB to warrant such an amendment. This is not in line, clearly this is not in line with democratic rights under our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And now let me come to clause 26A, compounding of offenses. Mr. Speaker, I think that there might be a problem with this clause, and it can be dangerous as well. In simple words, this means that if a contractor, a consultant, a service provider has defaulted in the performance of his contract, and we all know the numerous cases that we have every year. You just need to read the Director of Audit report year after year. You see the numerous cases where contractors, service providers has defaulted in terms of their contract, has not respected any clause of their contract. Now, with this clause of compounding offenses, the same person, the same service provider, consultant, just name it, they can come to the council, they can come to the board rather, to the CIDB, and negotiate his return on the market. So they have faulted, the defaulter, if I can say it, the defaulter comes, said, okay, I've done something wrong, well, I want to come back, just tell me how much do I need to pay to come back. This is also a new concept in our law, Mr. Speaker. I know cases where the MRA does it or the customs does it, but the penalty to get someone cleared is 3 times the amount of the penalty, whereas in this law, it is said, in this bill rather, it is said to pay such amount not exceeding the maximum penalty specified for the offense as may be acceptable to the council. And also where the council compounds an offense in accordance with this section, no further proceedings shall be initiated in respect of the offense so compounded against this person. Mr. Speaker, what does the bill says on an agreed amount? No further proceeding in regard of an offense that has been compounded. Mr. Speaker, what type of message are we sending? What type of message are we sending for illegal activities? That is, you can go and do whatever you want. If you get caught, you go and pay, and if you don't get caught, you can carry on with your activities. I don't think this is a good idea to have such a clause, although despite we have a provision of consent of the Director of Public, there are provisions in some acts, as I said, where penalties are 3 times higher when there is a default in contract. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, I would like to add that the associations, be it QS and architects, have sent several letters to the Ministry and to us members of Parliament, and to some extent I have referred to these letters in my speech. And before ending, official correspondence were received from official international organizations, namely the Africa Association of Quantity Surveyors. If I can quote just a paragraph of it. In finality, we would counsel the Mauritius Legislative Assembly should be extremely cautious and to exercise due diligence to ensure that roles in construction procurement are appointed to the best fit professions and in accordance to global standards. Role pertaining to determination and management of construction costs should be left solely to the best fit profession. Quantity surveying and the professional for quantity surveying, the profession for financial, contractual and administration of construction projects, and not to other professions who are engaged in other roles like designing. This is a letter from the Africa Association of Quantity Surveyors, which I'll show table. Again, another letter from Africa Union of Architects. They go in the same line as the Africa Quantity Surveyors. I would quote the main paragraph of the letter. We would like to remind the government that architecture is one of the most important cultural expressions of a people. And as such, both the Africa Union of Architects as well as the International Union of Architects that defends professional mobility but establishes that any architects who work in a foreign country must collaborate with a local architect. In this way, it guarantees employability, safeguard local contexture, cultural, environmental, promotes knowledge sharing, and avoids institutional conflicts between counterparts of the origin of the architects who intend to project in Mauritius. As I said, Mr. Speaker, collaboration, the word collaboration, should have been in the bill and not in regulations, because there is no certainty how collaboration will be defined. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, there is another letter from UIA, Union of Architects International, which is based in France. I will quote the last paragraph of it. In the interest of safeguarding important cultural, legal, and ethical principles, we urge the government of Mauritius to reconsider an ill-advised course with respect to legislation governing the practice of architecture and to adhere to the provision of this widely respected international professional accord. So, Mr. Speaker, these are not my views, these are the views of international independent bodies. Having said so, Mr. Speaker, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nakchidi. You have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, the mover of the bill, that is Honorable Minister of National Infrastructure and Community Development, started the second reading by saying, I quote, "We have before the August Assembly today a very important piece of legislation. And this CIDB Amendment Bill, Mr. Speaker, is no doubt a very important piece of legislation. As here we are talking of a bill which has as its primary objectives to regulate the construction industry. In a country like ours, a responsible government can't allow the construction industry to be lagging behind in terms of various reforms and not providing it with a necessary legislative framework. The policy choices governments make today will determine the success in rebuilding the economy and making growth more robust, resilient, and sustainable for tomorrow. There is a necessity worldwide to boost up the national economy. For us here to make our economies more resilient, we need systems that can build and retain more human, physical capital, and technical know-how from developed and emerging countries. Using policies that reflect and encourage the post-pandemic need for new types of jobs, businesses, and governance systems. The Honorable Minister of National Infrastructure and Community Development pointed out that so far we have failed to understand the supply chain as the suppliers of building materials, plant and equipment are not considered as stakeholders of the construction industry. However, I will add that we have not also emphasized much on the value chain in the construction industry. Now, what is a value chain model in the construction industry and how is it is different from other industries? Simply because other industries have a value chain which is linear, whereas the value chain of the construction industry is a closed-loop value chain. And this closed-loop value chain ultimately follow a linear system, which is a bit complicated to conceptualize. And a value chain in construction is a type of business model that includes all the different activities that are needed for the project. Within the construction industry, a value chain is created to ensure that the project is successful from the planning stages all the way to the completed and approved building structure. The end product of the construction industry, Mr. Speaker, sir, is what determines the achievement of a nation, as it provides to its people the everyday infrastructure which is meant to be serving the current and future generation for centuries, and also, in most cases, the end products or factors of production for enhancement of a firm and national economy. Well, when I say the end products are meant to serve for centuries, we did have some exceptions which were becoming the norms some time back, and I will come to that later. For the time being, let me stick to the value chain. So, Mr. Speaker, if you want to have buildings and infrastructures which provide value, we must understand that values are transferred all along the supply chain, and each of these stakeholders must be able to create and transfer the value all along the supply chain. Now let's see the CIDB Act 2018, that is the current act that we have. At section 2, subsection 1, the act defines the term construction works as follows. It says that the construction works includes temporary and any preparatory works required to undertake the works, dismantling and demolition of all types of building. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, the supply of materials is not included in this current act. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the construction industry, work does not only mean work. We have to consider the suppliers of the industry. It's only then that we are going to provide a value along the supply chain, and the value chain for any construction project, a specific variation is achieved within a fixed framework of distinct stages, that is, the design, the production of raw materials, and the conversion of the raw materials into manufactured products and construction itself. And as this one of the objectives of the amendments to this bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to take on board the suppliers of the industry and consider them as a stakeholder. The construction industry is the world's largest consumer of raw materials, and predictions before the pandemic projected a growth of 4.2% annually up to 2023 in terms of market value. So it is a need of the hour, Mr. Speaker, sir, to consider the suppliers as part of the team and enhance our value chain. I am laying much emphasis on the value chain, Mr. Speaker, as we have to understand the importance of the internal stages of each process, each stakeholder, and every aspect that interact to bring a project to success. I listened to the Honorable Minister carefully the other day, and he mentioned the following, I quote, "We have had several legislations that regulate the construction sector, and each and every stakeholder operating in quiet and unsynchronized manner," end of quote. Being someone from the construction industry myself, as my friend just pointed out, with more than 30 years of experience in the field, being a past president of the Mauritius Association of Quantity Surveyors, having served as an executive member of the African Association of Quantity Surveyors, I can say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the stakeholders are not only operating in an unsynchronized manner, but operating in an industry which is fragmented. And this bill will eliminate the distinctness of these processes, as well as the fixed-term, project-based nature of relationships along the supply chain, which results in a highly fragmented industry structure. Mr. Speaker, sir, we can't allow the construction industry to be fragmented. This industry is one among the biggest employers of the working population. I heard figures of 50,000, 65,000, but actually, the construction industry employs some 75,000 employees. These people earn their living in the construction industry, either directly or indirectly, which in fact absorbs, which is more important, Mr. Speaker, sir, a large percentage of the working population with a minimum level of education and manual skills, thus also playing a vital social role in the economy. With the current massive investment in our infrastructure, and you may recall, the Honorable Minister of Finance announced in his budget speech of 2020-2021 that the construction industry will be the engine of our recovery. We need to move the construction industry to another level of development. A few weeks ago, I was reading a paper prepared by McKinsey Engineering, Construction and Building Materials Practice. The paper, Mr. Speaker, sir, is about reimagining the next normal under which the construction industry will have to operate.
Don't have the floor there.
There are some loudspeakers over there.
They all have usurped my powers.
The paper, Mr. Speaker, sir, is about reimagining the next normal under which the construction industry will have to operate so as to thrive, and mention that it has to be in 5 stages, which will help to look beyond the immediate crisis and to plan for the future. The 5 stages is also described as the 5 R's, which are as follows. To resolve, be resilient, return, reimaginations, and reform. Resolve, we have to determine the scale, pace, and depth of action required to address the situation. Resilience, there is also a need to prepare for a rapid succession of financial challenges, liquidity, then solvency, and then profitability. Return, we also need to return to businesses. On return, we have to reimagine our way of doing things. And finally, the reform, Mr. Speaker. If required, when required, and where required, we need to reform the system. And this bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, is coming with a reform in the construction industry. In order to achieve this objective, there is a need for commitment at all levels, and there is also the need for an apex body to provide the necessary guidance and direction to lead the transformation process of the construction industry. And the CIDB could aptly play this role, and certain amendments is being brought through this bill so that the required authority and empowerment is provided to CIDB to be able to meet this expectation. With these powers, which this bill will confer upon the CIDB, like the Honorable Minister so clearly explained, especially in terms of additional ground to cancel and suspend registration under Clause 17, and empowering the CIDB to issue compliance notice to contraveners under Clause 20, there is no doubt that the objectives will be attained, and also the construction industry in general will be the winner, and so will be our professionals and operatives of the industry. Before I go further on other clauses which are added and amended, Mr. Speaker, let me now, I won't say refute some points and apprehensions raised by Honorable Usman Mohammed, but rather compliment on some aspects, as he only mentioned half of the stories. And I feel as a member of the parliament, that it is my responsibility to tell our people the full story so that they can know the truth. First of all, Mr. Speaker, sir, the honorable member mentioned about the footing of bill concerning the repairs of defects. Now we all know, as per the law, that prior of deciding the cost, who is going to foot the bill, we have to determine the liability. Other honorable members seem to believe more on what weekend paper for me, which is more of a shouting brigade paper than anything else. He relies more on these articles than the replies which are given here in this House, in this August Assembly, by our honorable ministers. In his reply to PQB 106, raised by Honorable Mayot on 30th of March 2021, and PQB 865, raised by Honorable Utim on 17th November 2020. Maybe you have forgot Honorable Utim, but let me remind you. Honorable Hari Ram replied that the particular project was a design and build project. Thus, all associated costs for the remedial construction works were being borne solely by the contractor. It was determined that the contractor was liable and had to bear the costs. Now, Mr. Speaker, having said that, let me take two other cases. First, the Ring Road, and then the Verda Link Road. There, Mr. Speaker, sir, you know who paid the bill? You, me, everybody in this house, and all the people who are outside this house also. And moreover, Mr. Speaker, the then Minister of Public Infrastructure, whom I once heard one of the honorable members from the opposition calling Minisculta, was never questioned by Honorable Osman Mohammed. I wasn't a witness to that, so I can't say whether you did or not. The former minister, it's good if you did. The former minister was seen walking next to you in Port Louis on the 13th of February like a sadhu. In fact, he's a daku, just beware of it. And Honorable Osman Mohammed was praising the building and quality of Singapore, CIDB.
Honorable Nakchedi, I heard the word which is not so appropriate.
Okay, I remove the
withdraw
word.
that word.
No, he's not a daku, okay. Sadhu.
Hey, what is happening here?
What
It's
is
already
threatening me?
withdrawn and then you take. You don't have the floor. Please.
The minister seems to have some lawyers here in this house. And we heard Honorable Tu, who explained that things are not so rosy there as well, in Singapore. But the quality of work which was being carried out by the Labour government is hard to beat in terms of disaster. They had the capacity to do things so bad that Honorable Boda, who is not present actually in this house, who was the minister looking after the repair of Verda Link Road, actually took longer to repair the defect that it actually took to construct the road. It's a real record. Mr. Speaker, sir, our government is doing its utmost to provide a better life for our fellow citizens. This bill also goes in the same direction. Improvements are being made and we are moving ahead. Allow me now, Mr. Speaker, to dwell on some of the amendments that this bill is proposing. As the Honorable Minister mentioned, the amendments proposed to add Section 15 by adding new clauses 21C and 21D will allow the CIDB to collect statistical information for strategic planning purposes and to obtain information. I am sure This will be helpful to the stakeholders of the industry and also to our young students. The Central Statistics Office, which will still be responsible for the collection, compilation, analysis, and dissemination of official statistics relating to various aspects of the economic and social activities of the country. The CIDB will provide statistics related to the construction industry, and this will help to clear the perception that the CIDB is only focused on the administrative office activities of registering contractors and consultants and collecting fees. Let me now, Mr. Speaker, comment on consequential amendments, that is, the amendments to the various council acts. There is a famous saying which says, a place for everything and everything in its place. This is what these amendments are proposing. This amendment describes the various profession boundaries within which they are to operate. For example, as per the amendments that are going to be moved at committee stage, I appreciate that the various professionals will be allowed to prepare documents, bidding documents, in the field of competencies. And the bill makes explicit mention of field of architecture for architects and field of engineering for the engineers. This is important, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we need for a partnering among all the stakeholders, and more so among the professionals. This is the case in other jurisdictions like South Africa, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia. Concerning the profession of quantity surveyors, the professional quantity surveyors, they have the Royal Institution of Quantity Surveyors of UK, which already describes the core duties of the profession of quantity surveying. And I am happy to see that most of these duties are described in the PQS Act already. However, I propose that all the financial aspects of bidding, that is the preparation of bid documents, especially the bill of quantities, and evaluation of bidding exercise, the submission of bids, that is the evaluation, is to be the sole duty of the quantity surveyor. I'm done, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your.
Thank you. Honorable Dania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the debate on the Construction Industry Development Board Amendment Bill. Yes, the world is changing faster than ever before. The global megatrends are shaking up the construction industry, and vulnerabilities in the construction industry in turn affect the economy, the environment, and the society as a whole. The population needs affordable housing as a basic need, and the construction industry is part and parcel of one's development and is also the source of earnings of many of our compatriots. The construction industry further serves almost all other industries and is among the largest consumer of raw materials. When the world is striving to keep pace with daunting challenges, we cannot afford to be a mere spectator and remain complacent. We have to be a player. We have to act, and we have to act now. Today, we are debating on amendments brought to an important piece of legislation governing the construction industry. Over the past 2 decades, the construction sector has developed into an important pillar of our economy and has witnessed rapid growth at an unprecedented pace. Several support schemes have accordingly been put in place to cater for the growing demand for both residential and non-residential buildings. A new legal framework, therefore, became a necessity to promote the development, improvement, and the sustainable growth of the construction industry. It was with this perspective that the Construction Industry Development Board, CIDB, Act was enacted in 2008. The CIDB provides both a platform and guidance for all the different stakeholders within the construction industry. The contributions of the various stakeholders in the industry are taken on board before reaching a consensus on the recommendations that would take the construction sector to the next level within a well-defined legal framework. Mr. Speaker, sir, in an evolving society, legislations must be regularly updated to reflect changing circumstances. Notwithstanding the fact that the CIDB Act has, since its enactment in 2008, been amended on 6 occasions, there were still some shortcomings which needed to be rectified in the wake of transformational changes this government has pledged to the nation. In line with the philosophy and vision of our Prime Minister, Honorable Pravin Kumar Jagnnath, to modernize the country towards its next phase of its development, the Minister of National Infrastructure and Community Development, Honorable Mahendranath Sharma Hariram, has introduced key amendments to the CIDB Act, and I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate him. These amendments aim at aligning the local construction industry with best practices around the globe with a view to effectively implement the government's vision in a sustainable manner. Sustainability, Mr. Speaker, sir, is made up of 3 pillars: the economy, the society, and the environment. And this involves striking the right balance between people, profits, and the preservation of the environment. The object of this bill, therefore, is a proactive reflection of government's intention to proceed with the modernization of the construction industry in a sustainable manner. Monsieur le Président, en d'autres termes, ce gouvernement préconise un développement qui transformera le pays sans pourtant porter atteinte au respect de l'environnement et des lois. Ce gouvernement accorde une très grande importance à la préservation de l'environnement. En tant qu'ingénieur enregistré de par ma vocation, député et secrétaire parlementaire privé, mais avant tout en tant que citoyen, cela me fend le cœur, comme à de nombreux de mes compatriotes, de voir un nombre conséquent de constructions mal planifiées. Je ne citerai qu'un exemple, notamment les nombreuses constructions faites carrément sur des drains et des systèmes de canalisation. Est-ce que ces constructions ont fait l'objet d'une planification de la part de professionnels qui ont à cœur leur métier et qui ont agi dans l'intérêt de leurs clients et du pays? Imaginez simplement les conséquences de tels actes, alors que Maurice, comme le reste du monde, subit de plein fouet les conséquences du changement climatique. Permettez-moi de rappeler les nombreux cas d'inondations enregistrés à travers le pays récemment et les conséquences désastreuses que cela aurait pu avoir. Je ferai ici une parenthèse pour saluer une fois de plus le Premier ministre et le ministre des Finances pour l'ambitieux projet d'aménagement de drains à travers le pays. Mr. Speaker, sir, the construction industry, like many other sectors of the economy, has been seriously affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and has witnessed negative growth. The total construction output has fallen significantly in many countries, mainly on the back of renewed lockdowns and bottlenecks in the supply of construction materials. In view of the sensitivity of the construction industry relative to economic cycles, construction enterprises and workers are particularly vulnerable to the drastic decline in economic activity amidst the scaring effects of the pandemic. On the upside, however, construction has a great potential to stimulate recovery thanks to its ability to create jobs. According to the Central Statistical Office, the contribution of local construction industry to GDP shrank by 19%, from 6 billion rupees during the fourth quarter of 2020 to 4.9 billion in the first quarter of 2021. In addition, the gross fixed capital formation, which is defined as the net additions to the physical assets of the country in a year, comprising principally of investment in buildings, plants, machinery, and transport equipment, has witnessed a slump of 7.2% over the same period. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would further like to underscore the monumental growth witnessed by the construction sector since 2016, thanks to the efforts of this government under the able guidance and leadership of Honorable Pravin Kumar Jagnat. This very sector would have achieved double-digit growths had the spillover effects of the pandemic not affected this country. The government strongly believes that the vigorous construction sector is a vital component towards ensuring the economic prosperity of our nation. We have not remained insensible to the pressing need to give some additional impetus to this sector. And as announced in the budget speech 2021-2022, government will invest some 65 billion rupees in various priority projects over the next 3 years. These projects include the National Flood Management Program, social housing units, Rivière des Anguilles Dam, community development infrastructure and land transport infrastructure, including roads and the Metro Express. These priority projects will be implemented across all regions in the Republic of Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, sir, coming back to the new provisions of the bill, I will comment on a few amendments which I believe are essential for the smooth functioning of the CIDB. For instance, Clause 20 of this bill now allows foreign consultants who have obtained a contract directly to practice independently. I've had another view from what has been said before, Mr. Speaker, sir. And this is without the need to enter into a joint venture with an architect or a local firm of architects, subject to applying for and obtaining registration. Mr. Speaker, sir, about abolishing the obligation of a foreign consultant to form a joint venture with a local firm with 51% shares to the latter. I believe that no such requirement should be made compulsory, as it is completely detrimental to the spirit of ease of doing business. Furthermore, we all know here in this chamber that this rule has never been respected. On the contrary, there are agreements which are made outside of the law and thus portraying a very gloomy picture of our country to foreign investors. Mr. Speaker, sir, we cannot tolerate such malpractices which benefit only a few and at the same time tarnish the reputation of our country at international level, especially when this government has left no stone unturned in its efforts to remove Mauritius from the grey list of the FATF. Concurrently, Clause 20A is being introduced to provide for registration of service providers and suppliers. Previously, this requirement was laid down in the accompanying regulations. These provisions now need to be brought in the Principal Act in order to exert better control over these service providers who quite often fail to perform satisfactorily. Mr. Speaker, sir, the proposed amendments will widen the scope of registration to include providers of construction works and construction services and suppliers of construction materials, equipment, plant, and labor for construction purposes. Monsieur le Président, comme évoqué précédemment, le ease of doing business est un facteur essentiel pour notre économie. Mais malheureusement, nous constatons que certains professionnels concernés par le secteur de la construction semblent réticents et considèrent que les amendements apportés à travers le présent projet de loi sont antipatriotiques. Les questions qui devraient nous venir à l'esprit sont: est-ce antipatriotique de vouloir le meilleur pour le développement du secteur de la construction à Maurice? Est-ce antipatriotique de vouloir ouvrir le marché et permettre à un plus grand nombre de professionnels de mettre leurs services et leurs compétences au service du secteur local de la construction? Vous conviendrez avec moi que la réponse est non. Et je tiens ici à rassurer les professionnels locaux. L'intention derrière les amendements apportés n'est nullement de mettre en doute leurs compétences. Nous avons aussi eu droit à des commentaires à l'effet que les professionnels au cabinet étranger profiteront des lacunes de la loi pour damer le pion aux professionnels locaux. Loin de là, Monsieur le Président. Croyez-vous qu'avec l'expérience que nous avons vécue depuis l'année dernière, avec la Covid-19 et le ralentissement des activités de nombreux professionnels locaux, nous, au gouvernement, nous voulons que davantage de nos compatriotes se retrouvent en difficulté? Au contraire, je dirais que nous devons agir en patriotes et mettre toutes les chances de notre côté pour la relance et la prospérité de notre secteur de la construction. Plus il y aura de projets, plus il y aura de l'emploi pour nos nombreux compatriotes. Maçons, fournisseurs de matériaux, plombiers, électriciens, urbanistes, entre autres. Tous qui se sont vus contraints de rester à la maison ou qui ont vu leurs activités être drastiquement diminuées ces derniers temps. De plus, les experts étrangers qui viendront à Maurice auront sans nul doute besoin de la collaboration de professionnels locaux qui connaissent bien les particularités du pays. Avant la pandémie de la Covid-19, sous l'impulsion du gouvernement mis en place depuis 2014, Maurice était déjà un vaste chantier. Et avec les mesures mises en place, il ne fait aucun doute que le développement du pays retrouvera sa vitesse de croisière et il y aura de ce fait de la place pour tout le monde. Mr. Speaker, sir, our professionals should be responsible and they should understand that without a healthy competition, we will never be able to overcome an important milestone in the history of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, based on my own experience as a registered professional engineer, I can tell, as a matter of fact, that any registered professional engineer can be qualified to prepare bid documents, as long as they relate to their field of expertise. This has been the practice for generations now, and I firmly believe that it should remain so. I also note under Clause 2 of the bill that additional powers will be conferred upon the CIDB, in particular to regulate not only the conduct of professionals such as architects, quantity surveyors, and registered engineers, but also contractors, service providers, and suppliers of goods. This provision, Mr. Speaker, sir, has unfortunately turned out to be a necessity to protect the integrity of noble professions such as engineers, architects, and consultants, whose names are being tarnished because of the ill practices from a few. Those who leverage on existing loopholes in regulations governing these professions. Des pratiques illicites, Monsieur le Président, auxquelles s'adonnent les soi-disant professionnels pour s'enrichir au détriment de notre pays. Et on est forcé de se demander à qui profite le crime. Je m'abstiendrai d'ailleurs de revenir sur certains méga-projets initiés avant 2014 et qui ont coûté cher au pays et à notre économie. Cela, soit parce qu'il a fallu les refaire presque complètement, soit parce qu'il a fallu puiser des fonds publics pour les améliorer et leur donner un visage digne de ce nom. Mr. Speaker, sir, in addition to sanctioning offences through the court mechanism, this bill also empowers the board of the CIDB to compound offences committed by these professionals and impose penalties as per the CIDB Act. This measure, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I wish to stress on this, which is based on the same principles as for compounding of offences under the Customs Act. And I believe it is a laudable one. It will allow for the prompt sanctioning of misconduct. And there is ample evidence of several cases where construction projects have suffered delays or even abandoned due to the negligence of professionals. In that respect, we welcome the amendment to Section 26 of the Act, which provides for more stringent penalties, notably up to 5 years imprisonment and 1 million rupees fine in case of offences. This is in addition to forfeiture of assets of offenders. Such provisions, Mr. Speaker, sir, will certainly act as a strong deterrent for unscrupulous service providers who by all means are only interested in maximizing profits at the expense of poor work and service quality. This will further aid at minimizing professional misconduct. Mr. Speaker, sir, the proposed amendments in this bill paves the way further to attract foreign investors and to subsequently lead our country towards major infrastructural development that will benefit all the stakeholders concerned, be it engineers, architects, or quantity surveyors. Mr. Speaker, sir, the amendments brought in this bill will complement our local construction industry with foreign know-how, expertise, competence, and technology, and will add value and guide the industry towards a sustainable path. In addition, the proposed amendments will lead the construction sector towards a new era of development with a distribution of value which will benefit all the stakeholders involved. Monsieur le Président, le secteur de la construction est un élément important de la compétitivité de l'économie mauricienne. La capacité de réaliser des projets d'investissement à un coût concurrentiel, dans les délais prévus et à la satisfaction de l'investisseur est un déterminant de la capacité d'une région à supporter les entrepreneurs locaux et à attirer les investisseurs étrangers. Il est donc normal que l'État mauricien intervienne à travers des lois appropriées et des amendements aux lois existantes pour réglementer la construction, d'une part, et d'autre, pour améliorer le fonctionnement de l'industrie de la construction à l'île Maurice. Les amendements prévus au CIDB Amendment Bill 2021 vont dans cette perspective, dans la vision et la philosophie d'un gouvernement moderne et avant-gardiste. Mr. Speaker, sir, the construction sector will continue to remain a significant provider of jobs, an essential pillar of our economy. Developments in this sector are expected to materialize rapidly in the coming years. It is therefore obvious that as a caring and forward-looking government, it is our duty to enhance the legal framework to cater for the future and, more importantly, to safeguard the interests of all concerned parties. The proposed amendments which are being introduced are therefore fully justified and warranted in light of circumstances that initially prevailed. This government has proven over the years to be a socialist government that has at heart the interests of its people. I firmly believe that the amendments brought in the CIDB Amendment Bill 2021 would modernize and professionalize the construction sector and respond to the needs of our citizens. The path to success will always require adaptation to changing circumstances, and we are amending the legislation to bring the construction industry to the path of success. With these words, I fully support the amendments brought to the CIDB Amendment Bill 2021. Long live the Republic of Mauritius. I'm done, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wish to thank the honourable members from both sides of the House who have participated and contributed in the debates on the Construction Industry Development Board Amendment Bill. I'd wish to highlight that I was quite surprised that after all that has been said in a section of the press on this bill, after hearing Honourable Amia, not only 2 members of the opposition ventured to try and criticize. I believe they had no choice, as this is a clear indication that the proposed amendments to the CIDB Act have obtained consensus. Mr. Speaker, sir, my colleagues have already commented and rebutted the issues raised by Honorable Mohamed and to some extent Honorable Amyamia. I would wish, however, to add further thereon. Firstly, I will start with the comments made by Honorable Mohamed, who I must say gave it a good try, but instead of making valid proposition or even just criticize, he shed the light on the amazing work being done at the level of my ministry in favor of the construction sector. He deplored the late circulation of the proposed amendments to the bill. Honorable Minister Tilak and Honorable To already rebutted. But what I'll add to this is, well, if he mastered the standing orders of the National Assembly, he would have certainly found that amendments to a bill are circulated at second reading stage, not before, certainly not after. Maybe the honorable member was eager to criticize that part specifically and was left with no arguments. He further mentioned that the regulation which will describe the type of collaboration proposed in the amendment circulated should have been promulgated together with the bill. And so was also the suggestions of Honorable Amyamia. Mr. Speaker, sir, the honorable members should be aware, unless he doesn't know the procedures, that regulations are made by virtue of the powers conferred upon a minister in a legislation. According to relevant regulations, will indeed be promulgated, Mr. Speaker, sir, after this bill will be passed and enacted. And this makes me wonder if the honorable members understood what the bill was all about. Above all, regulations are there for a purpose. If not, every single one of them would be in a bill. Then there won't be any need for any regulations. In fact, issues which are dynamic and are subject to regular review or prescribed by way of regulations and are not included in a bill purposely, like it has been the case previously in the Architects Bill, where those 51% was included in the bill. And despite it not working, Mr. Speaker, so I've mentioned that in my second reading, nothing could be done. No one could come and change it. It was there. And there has not been any, and I'll beg to differ from the honorable member who said there has been some kind of two collaboration. He mentioning two collaborations. In a country where we're spending billions of rupees in construction, two collaborations, two joint ventures, and he finds it, wow. Mr. Speaker, sir, if this collaboration has been done, this joint venture has been done, so let me put it clearly here in this House. It was not registered at the CIDB. Otherwise, we would have been aware. So what he's mentioning in this House has been an illegal joint venture. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Mohamed also questioned the delay that separated the introduction of the bill in the National Assembly and the debate that started on Friday. Of course, this is purely in the spirit of democracy, to allow all stakeholders to take cognizance of the contents of the provision in the bill and come up with appropriate suggestions. We received several valid propositions. We have eventually been taken on board following extensive consultations with all parties concerned. Mr. Speaker, sir, indeed, we cannot understand the honorable members on the other side of the House. When we allow sufficient time for all those concerned with the legislation to make constructive proposal, they ask, why this delay? And when a bill is debated immediately after its introduction, then they claim, why this emergency? This is purely demagogical on the part of the opposition. Should I say, as usual, Mr. Speaker, sir? I'm not giving way, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honorable Mohamed raised the issue of sustainable development, which he claimed he couldn't find in the bill. What on earth this bill got to do with sustainable development? Maybe my good friend Honorable Minister Kabir Ramanou can éclairer nos lanternes plus tard. But I don't find anything that pertains to sustainable development in this bill. If the honorable member wants to know more what we are doing at the level of the Land Drainage Authority with regard to sustainable development, I invite him to come with a relevant PQ, and then we'll answer and he'll understand. Mr. Speaker, sir, the honorable member also quoted the then Minister of Infrastructure, the then Honorable Siddique Chedi, who brought the CIDB bill in the National Assembly in 1997. And he described a certain vision therein, which the honorable member is fully conscious has never materialized. Well, to be honest, there was no better way to describe the notorious incompetence of the Labour government, which was in power up to 2014. And yet, they never managed to make the CIDB a pivotal organization in the construction sector, as the member himself suggested. Mr. Speaker, sir, I believe the member shot himself straight in the foot by referring to the vision of the 1997 Labour government. It is under the MSM government and its allies that the Construction Industry Development Board has thrived, and we are now going even further with this new legislation to give even more power to the CIDB. Allow me to mention here that the CIDB, unlike what Honorable Mohammed said, is not focusing only on administrative matters. In fact, the bill now will allow the CIDB to assume its role fully as a regulatory body of the construction industry. And I take it as a compliment from the honorable member when he pointed out that the CIDB is raising revenue to become self-sufficient. Of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is what this government aims at: efficiency and efficacy of our institution. Thank you, honorable member. Monsieur le Président, l'objectif principal de ce projet de loi est de donner un nouveau souffle au secteur de la construction. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to re-emphasize that there was an absolute need to harmonize the existing legislation, especially given the dynamic nature of the construction industry. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll also rebut to the proposition of Honorable Tu when he proposed that with regard to community-based participation. In fact, government policy is already heading into this direction. We encourage contractors to avail of the services of the local labor force in the implementation of their projects. In addition, as I mentioned in my intervention, in my second reading, the reboot of the construction sector involves a revival of the whole supply chain. And of course here, the local stakeholder will benefit from any development in the region. With regard to the setting up of a specific environment for women in construction industry, we appreciate the concern of the honorable member. In fact, we, at the level of my ministry, we are also sensitive to this matter. In this respect, I will suggest the CIDB to work in close collaboration with the relevant institutions concerned, including the Ministry of Labour and Industrial Relations, Employment and Training, to find the best option forward. Regarding my honorable friend, Honorable Chedi, position that he wishes that all financial aspects of a project to remain the sole responsibility of his colleague of the professional of quantity surveyors. However, after intense deliberation with all parties concerned, my officers and myself, after 2 years, have concluded that the provision in this bill are the best way forward. In fact, the amendment circulated in clause 29, subsection B, Roman 2, it does say preparation of, regarding quantity surveying, preparation of bidding document in the field of quantity surveying, and cash flow, forecasting, due diligence, replacement of cost assessment, respectively. So the provision, what has been made in the PQSC Act is being respected fully. Let me come now to Honorable Amia. In fact, contrary to what he said, Mr. Speaker, I have in front of me a mail from Mr. Satyan Dipchan, the chairperson of PQSC. He himself has agreed to a series of all our propositions. I can let the Honourable Member consult it afterward. So, with regard to Honourable Adil Amia, he stated firstly, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm not surprised that his speech should have truly been through the hands of some QS or architects, and as it was filled with many inaccuracies and issues of vested interests. I wonder if the Honourable Member did get it right, what is an architect, who is a QS, and who is an engineer. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is completely incorrect to suggest that there has been no consultation with the stakeholder before the circulation of this bill. Since consultations date back when the former Minister of Public Infrastructure was still on this side of the House. He may take time after one of the press conferences on a Saturday to ask him on our party. He'll tell you how far the consultation have lasted. Let me also confirm that more than 10 consultation sessions have been held with the relevant bodies, either by myself or by my officers of my ministry and the CIDB together. What more consultation do we need, Mr. Speaker, sir? Also, I understand Honorable Amia has come here to defend the interests of a few who were benefiting from the protectionist clauses in certain laws. With regard to bidding document, for ages now, engineers have always been preparing bid documents. Even before the advent of the QS profession, I hope the Honourable Member is aware of that. The Honourable Member quoted international bodies. I hope he's aware that the QS profession does not exist, does not even exist in many jurisdictions around the world where engineers have been performing the full range of these services. I hope that the engineers themselves have taken very good note of the insult of Honourable Amia that they have superficial knowledge of the work. Honourable Mohamed will appreciate. Unfortunately, he's laughing to that. So. Et on est même allé jusqu'à attaquer le directeur du CIDB. Excusez-moi, Monsieur le Président, je trouve cela lâche. These amendments...
Imputing improper motive to an honourable member, I would ask the honourable minister to withdraw this word.
No, you can't ask that. I should ask. And you should say, so help me God.
I'll withdraw if that please the member, but attacking les fonctionnaires, c'est malheureux. En tant que ministre aujourd'hui, nous de ce côté de la Chambre, nous voyons le travail que nos fonctionnaires sont en train de mettre pour améliorer et le sort de nos compatriotes. Et je profite ici pour leur dire merci.
Then you have to withdraw your words also. I don't know, you're making noise.
Yes.
Constituency of the honourable minister.
No, he's imputing motives again, Mr. Speaker, sir. But I won't ask him to withdraw. Yeah. These amendments will certainly not jeopardize the job of any professional. On the contrary, And I wish to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, sir, that up to now, no joint venture between foreign and local consultant under current conditions has been registered to the CIDB. However, there has been many agreements outside of the eyes of the law, which brings me back to what I meant to say when I mentioned that some need to behave like responsible and mature adults. Yes, Mr. Speaker, and I'm saying it again. And as I mentioned in my intervention, at the second reading, we cannot understand how a foreign consultant will come to invest in Mauritius when he knows at the very start that for every rupee he will have to relinquish 51 cents to a local partner, irrespective of the latter input or expertise. We know what happens in such cases in practice. There's exploitation. The most junior and inexperienced professionals are onboarded. Now, with this bill, the CIDB will be able to track these people and regulate more effectively. With regard to the term collaboration, let me inform the House, like the Honorable Member himself when reading the letter from the Union of International Architects mentioned, it forms parts of their guidelines. On ne peut pas être plus royaliste que le roi. And they say in their guidelines that there should be a form of collaboration, not necessarily joint venture. And that form of collaboration should be determined by the parties according to the prevailing law and environment of the host country. This is what the international guidelines say. Honorable Amiamia mentioned about compounding of offenses. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, sir, once again, he has not understood the principle behind that, or is purposely taking us astray. In fact, the compounding of offenses relate to violation to CIDB Act and not defaulting in contractual obligations under specific contract. This is why members will remember we came last year with an amnesty of those contractors who are working but were not registered with the CIDB. Parce que nous avons aussi un devoir pédagogique vis-à-vis nos contracteurs. We are not here just to try and apply the laws without knowing what the reality is about. Likewise, Mr. Speaker, sir, the honorable member, having come here maybe to defend some vested interests, is not aware that there is a difference between an individual engineer and a firm of consulting engineers. It is an association of firms providing consulting services as opposed to an association of individual professionals. With regard to the confidentiality clause, I wonder who is afraid of such a provision. This clause is precisely consistent with corporate and good governance requirements. It is worth reminding here that any council member owes his allegiance to advancing the interests of the organization and not those of his nominating body. You come in the CIDB to discuss about the advancement of the construction industry. This is why we have had the need to have a member from the Association of Consulting Engineers, because he, being an engineer, is totally in a different type of business. They offer consultancy. So we need their input, and that was the decision of that board, because when taking some decision, they feel they need that particular competencies in the board to have their views also. If tomorrow, this is what we call a dynamic situation, Mr. Speaker, sir. If tomorrow we feel we need, I don't know, a lawyer will change the regulation and make provision for a lawyer. This is a dynamic situation. To summing up, the Honorable Member comments, I thank him for trying. It has been 11 years now, and I know he wishes to bring real contribution to our country. Well, to reach that goal, he knows what to do. Mr. Speaker, sir, there has been consultations with all the stakeholders concerned on the bill before this House today, saying it again, and also on the proposed regulations which will follow. We cannot continue with a situation where different regulatory bodies met for individual construction industry professionals and the CIDB met for the construction sector as a whole are governed by pieces of legislation that are not in harmony with each other, and I think the Honorable Nakchedi have canvassed this beautifully, so I won't dwell further on that. Mr. Speaker, sir, what seemed impossible a year ago is now a reality. The construction sector is driving infrastructural development and is an engineer for economic growth. The hard work starts only now. There is also a need to open ourselves to the world in order to push our limits even further. We need foreign investment and, more importantly, foreign expertise. We need to improve the ease of doing business in order to attract those foreign experts to participate in the infrastructural development of our country. This is a unique opportunity to lay the foundation of Mauritius of tomorrow. Construction has evolved over the years, and developed countries are years ahead in terms of technology, the built environment, and most importantly, resilience to climate change. We need their knowledge and expertise to go that extra mile. We need this competence and technology transfer that will shape not only our physical landscape, but also the young architects, quantity surveyors, engineers, and all other professionals involved in the project delivery, so that one day we can stand on our feet and undertake projects for which presently we neither possess the know-how nor the skill and competence. There are at present, Mr. Speaker, sir, foreign investors with considerable amount of money who are ready to participate in major infrastructural projects in the country. Imagine how instrumental it would be in such trying time to reap foreign direct investment through our strategy to boost growth with the construction sector as a major pillar to our economy. And this is exactly, Mr. Speaker, sir, the overall goal of the bill before the House today. Before I conclude my intervention, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to raise an important issue which I believe is worth mentioning. This bill has been heavily criticized through various media. Unfortunately, I fail to understand how come, when it was my turn to speak on the subject in this very assembly and explain the purpose of each provision, not even a word has been relayed in those so-called independent press, except one. I guess, Mr. Speaker, sir, indeed, good news is no news. Ce qui est très dommage, Monsieur le Président, vu l'importance de ce projet de loi, qui a généré pas mal de commentaires des professionnels du secteur, qui ont enchaîné entretien après entretien, et puis aujourd'hui, plus rien. J'espère que la population dans son ensemble en tire les conclusions qui s'imposent. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish, before I conclude, to extend my gratitude to the Attorney General Office, to the CIDB, to the officers, allied to the very competent officers of my ministry, my advisors, as well as everyone who contributed to making this bill a reality. With this word, I commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
Is it seconded? Seconded. The question is that the Construction Industry Development Board Amendment Bill number 5 of 2021 be read a second time. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Public Bills Committee stage.
Please be seated.
Clause 1 short title, Clause 2 interpretation, Clause 3 Section 2 of Principal Act amended, Clause 4 Section 3 of Principal Act amended, Clause 5 Section 6 of Principal Act amended, Clause 6 Section 7 of Principal Act amended, Clause 7 Section 8 of Principal Act amended, Clause 8 Section 9 of Principal Act amended, Clause 9 Section 15 of Principal Act amended, Clause 10 Section 18 of Principal Act amended, Clause 11 Section 19 of Principal Act amended.
The question is that clauses 1 to 11 stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Clause 12, Section 20 of Principal Act amended.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move for an amendment to Clause 12 as per amendment circulated.
The question is that clause 12 be amended as per amendment circulated. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Ayes have it. The question is that clause 12 as amended stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Ayes have it.
Clause 13, new Section 20, A inserted in Principal Act. Clause 14, Section 21 of Principal Act amended. Clause 15, new Section 21B, 21C, and 21D inserted in Principal Act. Clause 16, Section 22 of Principal Act amended. Clause 17, Section 23 of Principal Act amended. Clause 18, Section 24, Principal Act amended. Clause 19, Section 25 of Principal Act amended. Clause 20, new Section 25A inserted in Principal Act. Clause 28, Section 26 of Principal Act amended. Clause 22, new Section 26A inserted in Principal Act. Clause 23, Section 33 of Principal Act amended. Clause 24, new Section 33A inserted in Principal Act. Clause 25, new Section 34 Principal Act amended. Clause 26, new Section 36A inserted in Principal Act. Clause 27, second schedule to Principal Act amended. Clause 28, new 4th, 5th, and 6th schedules added to Principal Act.
The question is that clauses 13 to 28 stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Clause 29, consequential amendments.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move for an amendment to Clause 29 as per amendment circulated.
The question is that clause 29 be amended as per amendment circulated. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. The question that clause 29 as amended stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Clause 30, commencement.
The question is that clause 30 stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
The schedule.
The question is that schedule stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
The title and enacting clause.
The question is that the title and enacting clause stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. The question is that I do report to the House that the Construction Industry Development Board Amendment Bill number 5 of 2021 has passed the committee stage with amendments. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. Please be seated. Honourable members have to report to the House that the Construction Industry Development Board Amendment Bill number 5 of 2021 has passed the committee stage with amendments.
Public Bills, third reading.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the Construction Industry Development Board Amendments Bill number 5 of 2021 be read a third time and pass.
Seconded. The question is that the Construction Industry Development Board Amendment Bill number 5 of 2021 be read the third time and passed. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. Ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move for the adjournment of the Assembly to Tuesday, 20th July at 11:30 a.m.
The House stands adjourned to Tuesday, 20th of July, 11:30 a.m. Honorable Anne-Marie Lavar.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma requête est adressée à la vice-première ministre et ministre de l'Éducation, le ministre des Affaires étrangères et le ministre de la Santé et concerne une problématique urgente. Monsieur le Président, je suis en présence des représentations d'étudiants ayant été inscrits dans des universités étrangères et ayant déjà payé leur année scolaire. Ils sont dans la confusion totale et s'inquiètent qu'aucune information n'est disponible quant à leur éventuel départ par rapport à la pandémie et la problématique de la vaccination. Est-ce que les vaccins administrés à Maurice sont acceptables dans ces pays? Je fais donc un appel pour la mise sur pied d'un comité regroupant l'éducation, les affaires étrangères et la santé et de communiquer les informations nécessaires aux étudiants dans les meilleurs délais pour dissiper toute inquiétude et confusion. Je vous remercie.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the PQ addressed to me by Honorable Usman, I've already given all the information pertaining to anybody who wish to travel to any of the countries, what are the rules, what are the regulations imposed. Now, at the same time, students who knows they have to travel to some countries, they have to contact the embassy to know what is the criteria that has been already established, or there is no criteria to go to their university.
Honorable Abchel.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Ma requête s'adresse au ministre de la Santé concernant le cas du bébé mort-né de Monsieur et Madame N, survenu le 21 juin 2021 au Sir Sivasagar Ramgoolam National Hospital. Monsieur et Madame N, en présence de leur avocat, se sont rendus à l'hôpital il y a 2 semaines pour rencontrer la superintendent, mais cette dernière a refusé de les rencontrer. La secrétaire a dit que la superintendent n'était pas autorisée à leur parler. Dans un souci de transparence, de justice et de compassion, j'interpelle le ministre pour qu'il intervienne personnellement auprès des préposés de l'hôpital afin que ces derniers reconsidèrent leur position et reçoivent Monsieur et Madame N en présence de leur avocat dans les meilleurs délais. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, sir, briefly, I'll only outline what is the procedure when a complaint is lodged in a hospital. The complaint may be lodged by the CSU, a verbal complaint or a written complaint, or the complaint may be to the police station that is in the vicinity of the hospital. Now, first, once the complaint is lodged, the director, the regional health director, he will conduct a preliminary inquiry. And then this preliminary inquiry will be submitted to the Ministry of Health. And in the Ministry of Health, there is already a medical negligence standing committee that is going to, again, review all the inquiries. Concerning this case, now, anybody who will look for information at the office of the medical superintendent, the medical superintendent is an administrative officer. He's not someone who may give any information concerning a case, especially a complaint. This person, whenever the medical negligence standing committee will conduct the inquiry, they will be called at that instance and where they can have all the questions or all the queries raised. So this is the procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My request tonight is addressed to the Minister of National Infrastructure, Honorable Bobby Ariram. I thank the Minister for the good work being done in the constituency number 17. As he's aware that the work for the new road connecting La Vigie to La Brasserie has already been started. The contractor, General Construction, has started with the clearing of land, more precisely at Montvert along A10 leading to Seziamil village. The lorries leaving the site using A10 towards Sejiamil village are leaving lots of mud on the road. With the rainy season, the road is very slippery, and with the mud on the road is making more dangerous for the automobilists using this road. It is also causing a lot of inconvenience for the inhabitants of Sejiamil. I would like to make a request to the Minister to use his good office to talk to the Road Development Authority. I know that the engineers are doing a very good work there, to request also the contractor to clean the tires of his lorries before using the A10 road, so that we can remedy the situation before any accident happens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. First of all, I would like to thank the Honourable Member for raising this issue and drawing our attention to that. This is what we expect from dynamic and young MPs like you. And I can only apologize to the inhabitants of Sejiamil, and rest assured that I'll act on it immediately after Parliament. Thank you.
Honourable Labine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My request today is addressed to the Honourable Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Local Government and Disaster Risk Management. It concerns the sad state of the island football ground. I will table some pictures that I took for the sake of the Honourable Vice Minister to have a look. And please kindly attend to them, because several requests have been made to the Municipal Council of Vakwa Phoenix for the past 6 months, but to no avail. If you could use your good office to remedy the situation, please.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'll contact the Chief Executive of the Municipal Council of Vakwa Phoenix to do the needful.
Honourable Team.
Speaker, sir, I'm glad that the Honourable Minister of Finance has just stepped in. I'd like to raise an issue which concerns his ministry, and in particular the MRA. Following the red zone imposed on Valley Pito, a lot of inhabitants have been making application to the MRA to get their self-assistance scheme, self-employed assistance scheme. Unfortunately, there is a lot of application has been rejected. Many of these people have made an appeal either online or to the MRA office, but up to now there is many people residing in Valley Pito who has not received the self-employed assistance scheme that was due to them by way of regulation. So I would really ask the Honourable Minister of Finance if he can take up the matter with the Mauritius Revenue Authorities so that the inhabitants of Valley Pito could get the self-employed assistance scheme. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, l'honorable, merci pour la question. L'honorable Adil Nia m'avait parlé de ça aussi. Et je suis en train de faire le nécessaire pour voir ce qui s'est passé, parce que c'est sûr que tous ceux qui sont dans les zones rouges ont le droit au Self-Employed Assistance Scheme, mais aussi au Wage Assistance Scheme. Donc, ils doivent en général faire une application et par la suite, la MRA procède et verse l'argent sur les comptes. Mais là, il y a eu un petit souci, je suis en train de voir ça. Et d'ici la fin de la semaine, ce sera réglé. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My request is addressed to the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness. I'm making a pressing appeal to you in regards to Miss HB, a 20-year-old University of Mauritius student, an inhabitant of Goodlands. In spite of a medical history of Guillain-Barré syndrome, the vaccination board, which went through her case, approved that she had to be vaccinated, and now Miss HB shows signs of relapse of the Guillain-Barré syndrome. She is currently admitted at the SSRN hospital. I humbly request the Honourable Minister to look into the matter so that she gets the appropriate treatment, so that Miss HB recuperates fully, and please kindly liaise with the family members as they are desperately trying to reach you. I thank you, Honourable Minister, on behalf of the family, for doing the needful.
Mr. Speaker, sir, rest assured, Honourable Member, I will do the needful.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma requête s'adresse au ministre des collectivités locales et le Dr Husnou. Cela concerne le bus terminus de Beau-Cascade en Yéta. Cela fait quand même presque 4 semaines que moi et les représentants de la municipalité sont partis sur le site pour voir l'état de ce terminus qui demande une rénovation. Et en même temps, on avait regardé par rapport aux requêtes des habitants pour un terrain de pétanque. Donc, je peux demander au ministre s'il peut use his good office pour faire activer les choses du côté de la municipalité de Vakwa. Merci.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank the honourable member for having given me advance notice for this question. I'm told that tender has already been launched, has already been floated, and in fact it's at evaluation stage now. So we'll take care of this problem. Number one, for the bus station, and for the pétanque pitch is concerned as well, we'll look into that as well.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. De nombreuses femmes à Maurice et ailleurs dans le monde, dont le Dr Kate Clancy aux États-Unis, ont fait part d'un certain dérèglement dans le cycle menstruel après avoir été vaccinées contre la COVID-19. Ma requête s'adresse au ministre de la Santé. Toutes mes excuses, j'ai oublié de préciser. Donc, ce qui a pour effet d'augmenter la peur chez certaines femmes qui m'ont contactée et qui souhaitent pouvoir enfanter et qui ont peur donc que leur projet de grossesse soit mis à mal. Si je ne me trompe pas, le vaccin Pfizer, dont on a eu la confirmation ce matin, qu'une cargaison arrivera bientôt, ce vaccin serait non seulement recommandé pour les adolescents, comme l'a dit le ministre lui-même, mais aussi pour les femmes enceintes, celles qui allaitent et celles qui ont un projet de grossesse. Donc j'aimerais demander au ministre de la Santé de bien vouloir éventuellement procéder à un sondage sur le nombre de femmes dont le cycle menstruel serait perturbé après la vaccination contre la COVID-19 et de bien vouloir donner priorité pour le vaccin Pfizer, non seulement aux adolescents, mais également aux femmes enceintes, à celles qui allaitent et à celles qui sont en projet de grossesse. Merci.
Studies and reports on COVID-19 vaccine, especially on pregnant women, we will keep on having them, but at the same time, we have to see what is the recommendation from international reviews, from international bodies, organizations, and then we can decide which type of vaccine will suit the pregnant women. To conduct a study that will take months, even years. So we have to rely on what is the international information, what is the information from other countries, and then we are going to base on these information so that we can administer vaccines, be it Pfizer or any other vaccine. So time will tell us and will guide us about the vaccine process for pregnant women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My request is addressed to the Honourable Minister of Education, Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Education, but unfortunately she is not here. I request the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister to pass on the message if possible. Since I am being solicited by many parents, worried parents regarding COVID cases registered during the last days in various schools and colleges, resulting in high rate of absenteeism, it would much be appreciated if the Honourable Minister can come forward to clarify the situation, reassure the parents, students, teachers, and I urge the Honourable Minister to please communicate. In such situation, communication is very important, is a key word. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, sir, concerning COVID cases that we have, we detect in the different localities or in the COVID testing center. The contact tracing team first will contact the person who is being tested positive and will do contact tracing, and at the same time inform the school if in case there is suspected contamination in the school, whether this child has attended the school or not. So all these is based upon what are the information that has been conveyed to the contact tracing team. so far, the Ministry of Health is liaising with the Ministry of Education to send all the information that is required, especially in positive cases.
I'm sorry.
If I may just add, for the sake of clarity, there are specific agreed protocols that are immediately applied by the health authorities and the educational authorities whenever and wherever there is a reported case of contamination or at least a positive case in schools. Disinfection automatically ensues. Isolation of classmates automatically ensues. And the Minister of Health only yesterday explained this very forcefully and clearly in public. Of course, we need to communicate. The battle of communication is a constant one, and we owe it to the public and to our population to constantly be communicating more and better, more effectively, if I may say so, and we shall continue doing so. But do rest assured that there are objective criteria as per well-established protocol helping the sanitary authorities and the educational authorities to address each and every case as it arises.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, the issue I'm raising tonight is addressed to the Minister of Agriculture, and I'm sure his colleague will take on the matter. The House is aware every year for every person who wishes to slaughter an animal for the festival of Eid al-Adha, they must have a permit from the Ministry of Agriculture. And for those buying on official form, they do get the permit there. But for those buying with individuals, they go to the Ministry of Agriculture and get their permit. And in the case of the residents of Port Louis, they go to Abercrombie Agro Office. I was told today that about 35 individuals went to the Agro Office at Abercrombie, and they were not able to get the permit. And I don't know exactly what was the reason that they didn't get the permit. So therefore, and I must say that normally it's a straightforward permit. Everybody gets it all year round. So I will urge the Honourable Minister if he can look into the matter urgently, because the festivities are scheduled for next Wednesday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I take note of the request of the Honourable Member. I know that usually during that time of the year when the Eid al-Adha is going to be celebrated, there are offices that are open around the island where people can go and apply for the permit. So if there is any issue with the one at the Abercrombie office, then I'll convey to my colleague minister to look into it and as to why things are not being taken as it should have been. So I'll convey that to the minister concerned.
Speaker, sir, I have an issue which concerns the Honourable Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Education, as well as the Minister of Health. It concerns the case of the Bas-Saint-Troy Government School at La Rosa, New Grove, where one grade 1 student has been found to be positive. And in fact, there is, contrary to what the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister just said, there is a lack of communication from the authorities with regards to contact tracing, with regards to screening, with regards to closure of the school. I've been informed that 2 days back, the authorities have conducted contact tracing in New Grove, but the parents of the school have not been informed. There was no communique whatsoever from the ministry. So may I call upon the relevant authorities to kindly look into the matter, and if there could be effective communication to the parents and staff of the school.
Mr. Speaker, sir, again, whenever a positive case is detected, there is a scientific way of conducting contact tracing and quarantine those who have been in contact. It goes in the same way for the schools also. Once a pupil or a student is being tested positive, that will follow the same course. At the same time, the contact tracing team, if ever they know that they'll come to know that there are more contamination, then it's a question of giving direction to the school to be closed. Otherwise, it's only the class that is involved. So the class will be closed for a period of 2 weeks. The school will be disinfected, and then in due course, the other information will be given to the school and the parents.
I would like to address the Honorable Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Local Government regarding the CCTV cameras of the Central Market in Port Louis. Many of them are currently faulty at the moment. And this gives rise to theft of vegetables and fruits and to the prejudice of the storeholders, which made the request to me to ask the Honourable Minister to kindly request the Chief Executive of the Municipal Council of Port Louis to have these 40 CCTV cameras repaired at the earliest. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'll pass on the message to the Chief Executive of the Municipal Council of Port Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My request tonight is addressed to the Minister of Energy and Public Utilities. It concerns the CWA pipes in the region of Bonaccueil and L'Aventure, because these pipes are still on the surface, haven't been buried yet, and they are often being damaged by vehicles, and the CW personnel are taking too long a time before they repair it. May I request the Minister to see with the personnel of CWA if the repairs can be done as early as? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I've taken note of what the Honourable Member has stated in the House. I shall definitely pass on the message to the management of the CWA. Thank you.
David.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma requête de ce soir s'adresse au ministre des Infrastructures publiques et du Développement communautaire et concerne les travaux de dragage qui sont effectués dans la région de Saint-Martin, à Belle-Ombre, par les services de ce qui semble être ceux de la NDU. Je comprends que ces travaux ont initialement pour objectif de dégager le passage de l'eau en zone inondable, mais ce qui m'interpelle, c'est que plusieurs plants de mangroves ont été arrachés, et je tiens à déposer à la Chambre 2 photos qui illustrent mon propos. Alors, sachant que la mangrove est une barrière naturelle contre les catastrophes climatiques, et notamment l'érosion, puis-je demander au ministre d'éclairer la Chambre sur le bien fondé de ces travaux à Saint-Martin, et surtout de nous dire si ces travaux de dragage sont issus d'une étude préalable d'évaluation des risques écologiques et climatiques. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I thank the Honourable Member for having given me advance notice of this question. I have been informed by the NDU that no mangroves have been removed by the NDU works. District Council had recently done some desilting works during the heavy rainfalls and flooding at Belle-Ombre and Saint-Martin, but no information is available regarding the removal of mangroves. And I know that the Minister of Environment is closely following up on all disturbances of mangroves that are happening, but I will do also understand that if we have had a choice to make between mangroves and the lives of the people living in Belle-Ombre, I think the choice is very clear, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma requête ce soir s'adresse à la ministre de la Sécurité sociale, qui malheureusement n'est pas dans l'hémicycle, et concerne le cas de mademoiselle Marie-Christie A. de Barclay, atteinte de trisomie 21, souffrant d'hypertension pulmonaire, cardiaque de surcroît, et doit être sous oxygène 10 heures par jour, ayant aussi des troubles de comportement et une déficience intellectuelle. En effet, mademoiselle Christie A, âgée de 27 ans et bénéficiaire d'une pension d'invalidité depuis sa majorité, mais a aussi bénéficié d'un carer's allowance pendant ces 10 dernières années. Et voilà que subitement, le Medical Board décide de supprimer le carer's allowance, alors qu'elle ne peut en aucun cas être livrée à elle-même et a besoin d'être accompagnée en permanence. Merci donc à l'honorable ministre, à qui j'ai déjà remis les documents et relatifs, de bien vouloir demander au Medical Board de reconsidérer ce cas. Merci.
I'll pass on the message. Most is that you have already, I understand you have already submitted the documents to her. Thank you.
No more matters. Assessment.